A very good evening to you, and many thanks for joining us on The Big Story tonight. My name is Sharon Momanyi. Now, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is running its affairs normally. Those are the words of IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati while appearing before the Senate's Truth, Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. Chebukati also told the committee that he has written to President Uhuru Kenyatta regarding the appointment of new commissioners after 4 commissioners resigned, but he's yet to get a response. According to Commissioner Abdi Guliye, the commission can still hold by-elections effectively given that the chair is still in office. Nonetheless, the commission cannot hold plenary meetings due to lack of quorum. The plenary for the commission is, however, important since it is during such meetings that vital decisions are made. Here now is an excerpt of Chebukati's and Guliye's submissions at the Senate committee earlier today.
Quorum issue for plenary meetings is a challenge because the subsidiary legislation which we have provides for 5 commissioners to form quorum. So that is, unfortunately, the law which was passed in Parliament for 3 commissioners was reversed by the court, and that is a challenge at the moment. So we cannot hold a quorum. We don't have quorum for plenary meetings.
It is clear who is the returning officer for any of the elections, whether it is at the county level or at the ward or constituency level. Elections are conducted by returning officers. You don't need a preliminary to have a returning officer. They are already in post. So what is required is for the returning officer to be gazetted. The chair is in post to do the same. So ideally, plenary does not play a bigger role in conducting that particular election because the election is conducted by the Secretariat, facilitated by the Secretariat, and it's led by the returning officer who is already in post. And I don't think there is any law which ties the commission decision to conducting that particular election. So in our own interpretation, if the chair is in office and if the returning officers are in post, elections will continue.
And on the show tonight for this conversation, I have lawyer Nick Biketi, who is joining me here in studio, as well as Professor Maurice Amutabi, who is joining the show from our Eldoret studio. But before they can weigh in this conversation, we're now crossing over to our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, who is on standby from our city center studios. Good evening, Sophia.
Good evening, Sharon. The IEBC, Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Chair, today whilst appearing before the Justice Legal Affairs Committee of the Senate, expressing confidence in as far as their capability to continue executing their mandate despite 4 resignations so far. 1 last year, just before the repeat elections by Commissioner Kombe, and the 3 just about a month and a half ago by the Vice Chair, Commissioners Mwachanya, as well as Kurgat. So now there's just 3, the chairman, you have Commissioners Molu and Guliye as well, and they're saying they can continue with the work, that the Constitution talks about a minimum of 3, a maximum of 9 as far as the constitution of the IEBC. So they're well in place to continue to conduct business and affairs of the commission. However, the challenge, which they also admit, is that plenary, as you also said, and quorum, which is 5, they do not have those numbers. So key and crucial decisions cannot be made at this point. Even when he appeared with the other commissioners before the JLAC Committee of the National Assembly, they still raised the issues we heard today that they've written to the presidency to seek clarity on the resignation, saying in as far as they were concerned at the time, they've been hearing about resignations, but there is yet to be formal word and formal confirmation from the president. But what makes this complicated, and perhaps why the presidency has not been responding to this, is if the president goes ahead to acknowledge the resignation, then that would trigger a process that would require new commissioners to be set in place. There are timelines for that. However, as we stand, we do not have a mechanism as a country to recruit new commissioners. This because when that joint committee of Jubilee and NASA at the time, led by Kiraitu and Senator Orengo, came together and formed the selection panel, that selection panel was just for the recruitment of the current commission. Its term expired thereafter. So as we stand, Kenya does not have a mechanism in which to bring in a new commission. And so until Parliament comes up with legislation to guide that particular process, it then becomes a very difficult and complicated scenario. And so a lacuna of sorts we are witnessing there. However, in terms of the by-elections that are still outstanding, the Commission says they are able to conduct the same. The presiding officers, the various committees of IEBC have been prepared and are very well capable of going on with these proceedings. But also important to remind Kenyans that these issues in the Commission bedeviling IEBC, we saw them way before the elections, quite a number of memos leaking here and there, and serious concerns have been raised in terms of confidence in the committee, in the commission, I beg your pardon. In fact, the three commissioners during their resignation, when they did it together, argued that they had lost confidence in the leadership of the chair, Chebukati. I'm joined now by Irungu Kenyatta, his deputy whip of Jubilee in the Senate, and he was in the sittings today in the Senate as Chebukati and the other two commissioners appeared. Thank you for making time for us. Seeking to have them come to the committee today, what were you seeking to achieve?
We wanted to know the status of the commission now that we have several by-elections which are pending.
Right.
We have a by-election in Baringo South, the late Grace passed on. We also have several by-elections for the position of the MCA, one in Kisii, one in Nyamira.
Yeah.
So we wanted to know, does the commission has the legal competence to proceed with those elections? Yes.
And are you satisfied with the responses you got from them?
No, personally I disagree.
Why?
Because one, they say that they have the competence, but when you look at the second schedule of the IEBC Act, specifically Section 5, it is the one that sets out the quorum. So they do not have a quorum to constitute a commission, a plenary commission.
Right.
And you cannot proceed to make any decision without a plenary. You have to send some commissioners there, you have to budget, you have to oversight, you have to make policies. So therefore, without a plenary, which makes the ultimate decision of the commission, from where I sit, you cannot then proceed to conduct an election.
So in terms of budget, they have that because that is usually coded and planned into the general election that there could be disputes. They have that. They have the committees, they say, that are helping to guide the various elections and do not necessarily need a commissioner in the various by-elections, and also they're not all happening on the same day. So the commissioner's argument is they can do this.
No, first and foremost, look at Section 1 of the second schedule. It says that the commission must always meet at least once per month. So meaning for now, they are in breach of that law, which is very clear. They're not meeting every month because they can't meet. They don't have full quorum. Number two...
But the commission can meet, and the commission is properly constituted.
Yes, but about meeting, because Section 1 of second schedule says you must meet at least once per month. So they are not meeting now.
They can meet, it's only that they cannot make decisions because there's no plenary quorum. But they can meet the three of them, so there's no breach, is there?
No, but you see, when you meet, you have to meet as an entire commission and make a decision.
Okay.
And you can't make a decision when you have no quorum. So the question is, they are not meeting, therefore they are in breach of Section 1 of the second schedule. Yeah. Number two, and most importantly, you are saying, no, they do have committees. I've been in government for a very long time, and I can tell you, we do not have a situation where government operates through committees, including, for instance, the National Assembly or even the Senate. Today we met as a committee, but our decisions don't bite. You ultimately report to the plenary, that is the Senate, acting as a collegiate institution. So committees, their work is just to make recommendation. It is the plenary that makes ultimate decisions. So therefore, even if we have committees of the IEBC purportedly functioning, they must make a recommendation to the main to the main commission, and then the commission must then make a binding committee, meaning the committee have no powers to make any binding power.
But at the end of the day, the chairperson and the two commissioners remaining in office are in this situation of no fault of their own. So instead of the Senate JLAC and National Assembly Justice and Legal Affairs Committee summoning them, isn't the onus on both houses to come up with these laws to set a mechanism that would allow for these positions to be filled?
Well, it's a good point, but be that as it may, as of now, they are crippled. So the question is, they ought not to be functioning. They ought to go home, they rest, but as of now, trying to proceed with business, you are doing that in contravention of the law.
Yeah,
that is my position.
But that doesn't answer my question.
Yes, I get you. You are saying that we need now to
instead of working, you're seeking to find out how they are really not working, because one would argue this is a witch hunt, because there's a section of politicians that have time and again said these three need to leave office. So you're focusing on showing how badly they're doing so that they leave office, as opposed to create that mechanism so that they're empowered to do their work.
You see, you need to understand there are two other institutions which, as of now, need to commence that process of filling new commissioners.
Right.
It is the presidency, it is the Attorney General. So, as of now, those two entities have not acted. So, Parliament cannot act on its own motion without initiation by those two other entities. So therefore, don't blame parliamentarians. Our work is to oversight. They need to come to us, tell us, hey, we are working, we are not working, this is the position, and that is what we wanted to know when they came to us. So therefore, from where I sit, Parliament did not do anything wrong by summoning those commissioners.
So the proposal of a mechanism should be coming from where? The AG?
Yes, of course. He is the principal legal advisor of the government of Kenya. Yes.
All right, so going forward, because we have still the delimitation of boundaries that's supposed to be happening, 2022 may sound far, but there's a lot of work that needs to happen. And here we are still with a back and forth. So do you have confidence in this commission as is?
No, of course, to me, I don't have. From where I sit, that commission ought to have gone home. They don't have a quorum, so therefore they cannot meet, and therefore, from where I sit, they ought not to be in office.
Shouldn't your energies be focused into the Attorney General and the President, for who you belong to the same party, to ask them to set this mechanism? Because if you're asking for them to go out, what wrong have they done?
Well, the point is...
Yes, so they go home. How does that resolve the situation we are in anyway?
No, you see, the advantage will be we'll be able now to commence the process ab initio. You understand? Because now, for sure, we have some people who are just hanging in that commission who cannot do anything. So therefore, I think the best case scenario would be they resign, we start the process afresh, and then from there we'll be able to pick Kenyans who can be able to work together, and the commission can now start functioning. Because now what we have is a moribund commission, a commission that cannot do anything. So therefore, from where I sit, they ought to vacate.
Yeah. The clarity I'm not getting is why not help this commission by, again, pushing the requisite institutions to do what they need to do to allow them to work. Because the argument they need to go so that we start afresh, we've had so many commissions in place. So what is that real grounding of that argument that let them go so that we start afresh?
One, we as Senate, we are going to talk to those other entities. By the way, we made that pledge today. We are going to reach out to the Attorney General. Okay. We are going to reach out to the Presidency to ask them, hey, what do we do? Now this commission is not working. So to that extent, I want to give that pledge that we, particularly those of us who are in government, we are going to reach out to those two organs.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, surely, these people are drawing salaries, isn't it? And they are not working. Any decision they are going to make is going to be challenged in court, and I foresee a court which is properly exercising its mandate is going to nullify all the decision of the IEBC.
Yeah.
So therefore, to move this country forward, they need to say, yes, we have served this country, yes, we have not been found culpable vis-a-vis any allegation, but now we want to move this country forward so that we start the process afresh. From where I sit, that would be the best case scenario.
Final question. Clearly, there's a big problem in this country, and as far as the Electoral Commission is concerned, we keep doing a lot of turnaround. It's quite high. So what is that solution to making sure we have a working IEBC? Or do we need to set in law that they come one election and they're out? What is it that sees us have such a huge problem with each commission?
I think the problem with the guys who have been putting there are people who do not really understand the mechanism of organizing something that is quite legitimate in such a manner there will be no divisions. There are people who do not know how to build cohesion. They do not have those ethics of building teamwork. Because, for instance, you know, the reason which was cited by those commissioners who resigned was that the chairman does not have those skills of bringing everyone together. So from where I sit, I think we need either we consider getting high-ranking person who has been, let's say, in major corporate entities, I would imagine, or maybe a person who has been a major politician, I would imagine, because when you are in those positions, you develop some skills. That is acting as a team player. You are able, for instance, to withstand various shocks. But the kind of people who have been taking
vetting, there was a process, and these are the people that prevail. So which angels are these that we are talking about that hold this skill? Because at the end of the day, there will always be fault drawn from one or the other.
Well, I think the vetting committee, I think the National Assembly, they did not do a very good job when it comes to appointing these characters. Of course, that is why you have seen divisions. You are seeing a situation where people are resigning. Maybe, from where I sit, we need to consider going to the 2000 commission. You recall that model? The model was very simple. This is a certain party, a certain political party. Can you give us your names? This is also another political party. Can you give us your names? So that is very clear. When those people are seated there, they are representing certain interests.
So they are overtly known where their interests and beholden.
I think so, by the way. Because so far, it appears the best election since the return of multi-party democracy that we have had was the one that was shepherded by the IPPG entity.
Formula.
Yes, you recall in 1998, they came up with a certain formula where it was very clear. I'm a commissioner, I've been nominated by this party. Maybe that would be the best case scenario. So that when you are there, it's very clear you are pushing certain interest. And once you do that, it appears you are able to come up with a collective decision without this idea that we take you there, we assume you are neutral, whereas indeed probably you are leaning to a certain way. I think that would be the best case scenario. You are there, you are nominee of a certain political party. Of course, the big political parties, not the small ones. Maybe the small ones can be represented by one or two commissioners.
All right. Many thanks, Irungu Kenyatta, Deputy Whip in the Senate for the Jubilee Party, with us tonight, Sharon. As you can hear, his proposal that IPPG, he says, is the best formula so that overtly it is known who interests of the proposed then would be commissioners are linked to or geared towards, as opposed to the scenarios we have now. So being able to get those views tonight, Sharon.
Right, many thanks, Sophia Wanuna. Critical issues they've been able to discuss there that really set the tone of the discussion that we are going to have deeper in studio. I have lawyer Nick Biketi, because we need to get that legal perspective of now where the IEBC is, what legally they can do, what they cannot do. And also who will be joining me from the Eldoret studios is Professor Maurice Abutabi. And let's just begin with you, Mr. Biketi. From a legal standpoint, we see the chair of the commission saying that as currently constituted, they can carry out activities such as the by-elections, that are pending, saying that the only challenge they have, they cannot have a seat for plenary because they don't have quorum. Legally, what can they do? What can they not do?
Sharon, what comes to my mind in view of this ongoing discussion is the Court of Appeal decision as regards to the investigation by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission on the question of CS Kamau. There was a decision that the Anti-Corruption Commission was not legally constituted as at the time when they attempted to prosecute the matter of the CS Kamau. And that decision was confirmed by the Court of Appeal. I would want to believe, since these are commissions, these are constitutional commissions, the same decision will be rendered in view to the IEBC. As we stand today, in as much as there is that position that there are 3 commissioners, constitutionally that is the minimum. But the question is, can they function? By the fact that they cannot, and in drawing a parallel or juxtaposition with the decision of the Court of Appeal, My position, and from where I sit and understanding of the law, IEBC is crippled, and it cannot legally perform its functions.
All right. And I want to bring in Professor Amutabi to weigh in on the same. We are seeing an IEBC commission that is really been battled. And do you also agree that it cannot function as is currently constituted?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sharon Momanyi, for this chance. I would like to point out that we saw this repeat itself last time during the Isaac Hassan team. And Isaac Hassan team held together for a long time, but the writing was on the wall. One would like to sympathize with the Chebukati's team, but the point is that when you are 3 commissioners out of 7, it actually renders you almost inoperable. You can't operate because of the statutory requirements of quorum. Mm-hmm. So I think looking at what's obtaining right now, it will be just a good advice that Chebukati and his team negotiate their way out, because when you find majority of the commissioners have walked out on you, it means there are imperatives that they are not comfortable with. And you cannot have traction to handle such a weighty issues like elections and so on when you don't have quorum. And to go further than that is to indicate that is writing to ask for more commissioners and there's no response is indicative that probably it's time for his team to maybe clear the way for a new commission. What I think Kenyans need to learn is that when a majority of people, stakeholders, like 7 commissioners and 4 walk out and you are 3 remaining and you can't operate, the reasonable thing to do is to resign, because it means that there is a lack of confidence even among yourselves.
I just want
secondly, is that to resign is not to be seen to be weak.
And I just want to interject there, Professor,
right,
because the chairperson said, even today when he was sitting before the Senate JLAC, that the resignation of the 3 commissioners was because out of a result of external forces. And would this not really inform the question of why they are asking, for that procedure, that process of reconstituting the commission, but no one seems to be responding? Is there no question that we need to ask there?
That's a good point, Sharon. But I think the point that observers are making, and my counterpart who just made his point earlier on, is that when you are a captain of a team and over half of your players walk out on you, it just makes sense for you to reconstitute in a manner that is constitutional. And the best thing to do is to resign, because majority are not with you. When 4 commissioners walk out of 7, and the 3 remain holding fort, it doesn't just make sense in terms of logic. And not every law is written, because some legal issues require logic for you to see and concur with the rest, that the reasonable thing to do is to step aside and a new commission is put in place. What happened with the Isaac Hassan team was that they realized that a majority of stakeholders were not comfortable with them, and they negotiated the way out. They negotiated for terms that will allow them to be paid for the full time they should have served. And one expected Chebukati also to negotiate with the stakeholders that is paid out for its entire term and allow a new commission to be put in place.
And I just want to bring in Biketi to weigh in on that. And particularly on the legal perspective, is there any justification in law why there has not been any advertisement for the vacant position as yet? Because I want to understand that legally the president is meant to gazette the vacancies within 7 days and then appoint, an appointing panel within 14 days. So what are we looking at in terms of from the legal perspective?
Sharon, sometimes, as a professor has indicated, some of these things are not written black and white in the law. The question when we're discussing IEBC, we are talking about the referee of the political situation in our country. And as you understand, the politics of this country are extremely volatile, and the interests are always very high. As the senator indicated earlier, that the previous commissions we've had, including the one of Chebukati, it's always been a question of consensus between the political sides that are playing in. Now, in view of what you're saying, you will see that we've just come out of an election that was highly contested, that was extremely volatile. I would want to believe that the president will want to tread very carefully on the question of the IEBC commissioners, to the extent that it will not just be the question of the law, but it will also be a question of trying to see. And let me just interject myself. Remember the president, when he was making his speech in Parliament, he was very categorical and said that this country will never have an election like the one we had in the previous times. I want to believe that they want to set a new atmosphere in the coming election. Maybe even make considerations on how do we come up with the IEBC commissioners. So to me, it might not be a question strictly of the law. And maybe just to come in on what the professor indicated earlier, trying to show that, or rather trying to put in the point that Chebukati and the team should resign. In as much as we've seen Chebukati, and rightfully so, saying that the Constitution, the commission is legally constituted if we have a minimum of 3. But as I said, IEBC as a commission is holding the political interests of this country. They are the custodians of the political interests. They are the medians. They are the people who hold the process of the will that people express. For that reason, then, they will not be asked, or rather will not be asking them to resign, not from a point of law, strictly, but from the point of the will, the public will, the good will, which is a silent line in such offices.
All right.
So that is my take.
Right, and I want us to come back and talk about that, at which point, we can define what goodwill is, what political battles is, and what is the place of law in